Okay, year 9. This is Mr. T. Okay, sorry, I got COVID. All right, just like many of others. Uh, but uh, I know you might not be missing me, but you can't get away from learning math, and so that's why here I am. So, I still try to. I would like you to still try to learn as much as possible in the math lesson. All right, so what we're going to learn today is linear relations, part 3. So you should have a handout with you. That should be the latest handout. Okay, and we're going to learn equation for a given linear graph and equation from a given point and its gradient. Then I will um, do the next part um, tomorrow. That will be another video then. Okay, so during this video, I will try to make it around 30 minutes. But during the video, you might be asked to pause the video. Yeah, I need the teacher to help me to pause the video, and you can sometimes you need to do your own work. All right, so let's get started. So the first part is something you've learned in year 8. So let's see what it is. Okay, so in year 8, you've learned how can you find equation from a given linear graph. So that means if you see a graph, can you find its linear, can you find its equation? Okay, so if you still remember, a standard linear equation is in the form of, from year 8, that would be the form of a linear equation. But I guess many of you have already forgotten what's the meaning of those 4 letters. So you have y, m, x, c. So basically it should be read as y equals m times x plus c. All right. So that should be a multiplication between the letter m and x. I use different colors for different letters because they have different meaning. So first of all, let's think about what's the meaning of that m. So we've been using it for the first since the first week this term, right? So that m means slope or gradient, okay? And then that green letter c, which should be y-intercept, okay? Please copy that onto your handouts. All right, then how about x and y? Oh, okay, so I showed the graph earlier, so sorry about the animation, it's a bit wrong. So if you see the animation here, what do we mean by y-intercept is actually that green circle, okay? So that's -3 here. So the meaning of y-intercept is the point that the line cuts the y-axis, well, when x is 0, okay? And how about x and y? So remember, x and y actually forms the coordinates of any point on the linear graph. It's any point on the linear graph. Okay, so you can see from this graph, the gradient is actually what? If you use rise over run, actually you could find the gradient, okay? And also that green circle, and you can see the y-intercept. So if you know both the gradient and y-intercept, then you can put that into the equation, and you will have that linear equation. That's how we did things in year 8. And also there's a name for this form. This is called slope intercept form. Because in this form, you will see two numbers. One is the gradient, which is indicated in um, blue color M. The other is y-intercept, which is indicated by the green letter C. So I'm going to show you on the decimals how these two numbers can change the shape of the graph. Just give you some visualization what actually these two letters can do. So let's go to the decimals. Okay, so that's the decimals program. In that decimal program, right now you see on the left hand corner here, I've got an equation y equals mx plus c. Okay, and for the value of m right now, I've set the value of m being 1 and the value of c is 0. So that's why the line is passing through the origin, and also the gradient is 1. How can you know the gradient is 1? So you can see the rise over run. You go, okay, so I might just zoom in a little bit. Okay, so it's easier to see. Okay, that's too much. All right, so I make the letter bigger. Okay, yeah. So you can see if I go up, I go to the right hand side by 1, that's run, and also I go up by 1 unit, that's rise. So when the run is 1, the rise is 1, so the gradient is 1. That's our gray wave, m equals 1. What happens if I change the value of m into 2? Okay, so the line becomes steeper. So let's zoom out a little bit, and you can see this time now, when you go to the right by, from this point, you go to the right by 1 unit. Okay, so the run is 1 unit, and then you go up by 2 units, go to here. Right, okay, so you can see the gradient should be rise over run between the 2 points should be 2. So that means when m equals 2, the gradient, the line will show you. So m actually control the gradient of the line. I hope you can see it. So if you learned that in year 8, it's all about revision. Okay, so let's try to make m negative. For example, if I make m negative 1, now you can see the line becomes decreasing. It's like a dropping line from left to right. Okay, and the rise now becomes for every 1 unit of negative rise, and the run will be 1 unit. So that's why the gradient is minus 1. Okay, so how about if I change the value of c? So as I've shown you, I've told you, I should say, c controls the what? Y-intercept. So if I, right now c is 0, but if I want to change c into 1, so what will happen? So the whole line move up by 1 unit, because right now, you see, that would be the new y-intercept, 0, 1. So that means the y-intercept is 1. And if I move to another one, so now z is 2, c is 2, and the y-intercept right now is here. So the y-intercept becomes 0, 2. Oh, it's a bit hard to see whether that line is y-intercept. Okay, so let me change the setting a little bit. I add some arrow so you can see the y-intercept there. Okay, I should put x here and y here to make better. Okay, so that the vertical axis is y-axis, and you see the y-axis here. So the y-intercept is now 2. So if I change to negative value, so the y-intercept becomes -1. So when c is -1, y-intercept becomes -1. When c is -2, y-intercept becomes -2. Okay, so let's do some animation. How about I go back to gradient equals 1, then I just run a little bit animation on the c value and see when c value changing. Can you try to look at well, the c value is changing. You can see the line is just moving because the y-intercept is changing. Okay, let me stop here. Okay, I make c equals 0, so I go back to the origin. But then I'm going to change the value of gradient. Okay, so I see when the value of gradient is changing, but the y-intercept is not changing. Okay, right. The line is moving like you have a fixed point there on the y-intercept, but then the gradient is changing. Okay, so if I change the y-intercept, but just once, c equals 1, so the fixed point change to y equals 1. Okay, so how about I get two things changing at the same time? So it becomes quite interesting, right? Okay, so that's what happens. Okay, so if you want to play this software, you can just go to Desmos in Google. You use Desmos, so any one of you can type in the number you want and you can form a line. Remember, you need to input y equals mx plus c. Okay, but of course you need to have a laptop or a iPad with you. Okay, so let's go back to our PowerPoint again. So you can see for y equals mx plus c, what actually we're looking at now is the value of m and the value of c. That means the gradient and y-intercept. So let's go to your handouts. Okay, so let's go to your handout. That should be a page number 2. Okay, so for page number 2, what you're going to find is example 1. In example 1, you are going to find the gradient. So that's one thing. And then you are going to find the y-intercept. And then using m and c, work out the rule. So there are three things. One is gradient. Second, y-intercept. The third is rule. Of course, the rule means gradient intercept form. Okay, first of all, let's try to do part A. What would be the gradient m in part A? So let's just pick any 2 points. Let's start with, how about this point? Use another color. Okay, and any other points you want? How about here? Okay, so each little square is 1 unit. So let's have, so I'm looking for m, the gradient. Okay, so how many units here? 1, 2, 3. So that means 3 units. Okay, the run equals 3. Then I'm going to have, that's rise, isn't it? How many units? 3 units. Okay, so how can we find the gradient? Gradient equals rise over run. So it should be 3 over 3. It should be 1. Secondly, how can we find the value of c? C is y-intercept. Where is y-intercept? Y-intercept must be on y-axis here. Oh, sorry, just this one. So here's the point. The line cuts the y-axis. So y-intercept c is equals to. All right. So how about rule? So our rule will be y equals m is 1 times x. Do I need to write the times? Possibly just for this time. 1 times x, because gradient is 1, plus y-intercept c equals 2. Okay, so of course, 1 times x, we can simplify that by writing just x plus 2. So here's the rule. It's done. Oh, all right. Okay. Anyone, if you need some time to copy or to digest, just raise your hand, and I know the teacher will stop the video for you for a couple minutes. Thanks for the teacher. Let's try to do B. Again, we're going to find gradient. Any 2 points? Yeah, how about here and here? Just any 2. You don't need to be the same as mine. Right? And let's do the rise over run. Okay, so this time, what would be rise here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Is it 4? Wait a minute. It's going down. So it shouldn't be 4. It should be -4. The run, 2 units. It should be 2. Okay? Run is always positive. Okay? Now, gradient equals rise over run, which is -4 over 2 equals -2. Y-intercept, where is y-intercept? Where the line cuts y-axis, was here. So where's this point? It should be 0. So c equals 0. So the rule, y equals -2 times x plus 0. Simplify the expression. Y equals -2x. That's it. The most simplified version. No problem. Again, if you need more time, just raise your hand. The teacher will pause the video for you. Oh, good. Okay, fantastic. Let's move on to some practice. So this practice, I'm not going to ask you to do them as homework because they are so simple. They were year 8 level. So can you just do it now? Find the gradient m, y-intercept c, and work out the rule. Just follow the examples we've just done. I think you need at least 10 minutes. Some of you can do it much quicker, I know. If you do it quicker, you can do more. You can go forward, right? You can fast forward, that's no problem. But let's say I will give you 10 minutes to do question A, B, and C. And if you don't understand anything, you can ask some of your classmates. They have finished the questions. But for the first couple minutes, you need to be quiet, focus on your work. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video now, and but for around 10 minutes, then we restart. Okay. Okay, so here are the answers. Can you check your answers? Then let's move on. Then we are going to learn something new, which is about finding the equation of a linear graph from a given point and its gradient. So you will be given a point and gradient, and then you need to find the equation. Remember, the equation should be in the form of y equals mx plus c. All right, let's start. For part A linear graph with gradient of 3 and y-intercept -4. This one should be the easiest one. Why? Because you've been given the gradient and the points just y-intercept. The y-intercept, if we know that -4 is y-intercept, that means what? That means c equals -4. So the rule or the equation, okay, so the rule and the equation, they are the same thing. So the rule is just y equals 3x plus -4. So plus -4. So some of you might write plus -4, but then you should simplify into y equals 3x minus 4. Let's try part B. A linear graph with gradient -1 passing through the origin. Okay. Where's the origin? Origin means the intersection of x and y, x-axis and y-axis. So here's the origin. So origin actually means 0, 0. Okay, let's see how can we do it. So if we pass through the origin, what does it mean for y-intercept? That actually means the y-intercept is just y equals 0, right? So for part B, it's quite obviously that m equals -1, and from the fact that it passes through origin, we know c would be 0. So our rule is y equals -1 times x plus 0. Shall we simplify this expression? Of course, just minus x will be fine. Right. For C and D, they become more difficult. First, for C, a linear graph with gradient -12 and passing through a point 2 and -4. Okay, so given also 2 -4. So do we know y-intercept? No, we haven't got any information about y-intercept, so that's why we don't know C value. And how can we do this? So the following step is the most important step for today's lesson. If you know this step, you can achieve much better mark. I mean the mark for A or B grade in your final exam. That step is, if we don't know, listen, if we don't know the value of C, we don't have any direct information for y-intercept, what should we do? You should still use that the form of a slope-intercept form as much as possible. But then you should substitute as much as you can, because we've got minus half, so you substitute that minus half into m first. And how about x and y? So remember that x and y, if you still remember, what do we mean by x and y here? Let's go back. X and y is any point on the linear graph. So that means I can put any point on the line into x and y. So how about this 2 and minus 4? Actually, this is our x and y. So why don't I put minus 4 here and 2 here? So I just substitute 2 and minus 4 into our equation. And how about C? We still don't know C. Just keep the C here. As long as we don't know it, just keep the C here. Because this one is so important. So let me try to emphasize that a little bit. Possibly too much to emphasize. Anyway, okay. Oops, sorry. Let's go back. Okay, so what I'm going to do next, remember we really need that C be found. Okay, so let's say this is minus 4 and minus half times 2 is minus 1. So can we find C? Of course we can. You can just move the negative 1 to the left hand side, then you will get C. How can we move that? Remember this is minus 1 plus C. So we should add 1 to the left hand side, then you will get C. So C will just become minus 3. So we've got C eventually. Is that finished? Not yet, because our main target, our ultimate goal is to find the rule or the equation. So we should write gradient minus half x plus C. So C is minus 3. Of course, then you want to simplify this a little bit. That's it. So let's go back to repeat some of the working here. So like I said, which step is the most important step? The most important step, I think, should be that one. Okay. Oh, sorry, not this one. Sorry, make a mistake. Should be this one. Okay, so remember what we got looking for is to find C, but you don't have any direct information of C. So what you can do is still to use that slope-intercept form. You still stick to that form, but then you substitute the information as much as possible. If you got gradient, then good, put gradient into the equation, and then they will give you a pair of coordinates called x and y. Then use x and y to do the substitution. Then all of a sudden, you are able to find C. Don't forget to put m and c into this equation. The answer is to look for a rule or an equation. So your answer should be in the form y equals mx plus c in the end. Okay, so that's for our part C. Again, if you need more time to copy or to think, just raise your hand bravely. Okay, yeah, the teacher won't blame you. I'm pretty sure. Okay, right. D, a linear graph with gradient 0.6 and x-intercept 5. Okay, what does it mean? Be really careful. Here is not y-intercept. If it's y-intercept, it becomes really easy. It becomes part A, isn't it? But once x-intercept instead of y-intercept, it's much difficult. What do we mean by x-intercept? X-intercept means a point on x-axis. Where should it be? It should be on like, all right. So if I put x-axis here, y-axis here, where is x-intercept being 5? Should be here around, let's say this is 5. So what's the coordinates of that point? It should be 5, 0. So when they say x-intercept 5, that actually means 5, 0. So 5 is x coordinates, 0 is y coordinates. So then this question is a bit like the one we've just done, because you are given gradient and then another point. Okay, let's write gradient equals 0.6 and our another coordinates which should be 5, 0. That's the given condition. Again, I'm going to write down the equation again, and I put gradient into it. Then I'm thinking about how about the xy value. Here's the xy value. So don't put the number wrong. Okay, you need to put the second number, which means y, on the left hand side. Then you put 5 here. So here's a mistake if someone can spot it. So here's the mistake. You can see you should put a cross here. You can't write just 0.65. Yeah, that should be a cross. That should be a multiplication. Okay, that should be 3. And you can solve for C. C is -3. You put 3 to the left hand side. Okay, again, C is -3. It's just a coincidence. Okay, still remember to write the rule. 0.6 x minus 3. That's it. So we've got another one. Oops, too large. Sorry. And okay, so let's just go to the PowerPoint. I'm going to run down the steps quickly. Okay, so remember the 4 questions. For part A, A is easy because y-intercept is given. So you just put everything straight into the form. B is quite easy, isn't it? Because we're passing through the origin. That means y-intercept is 0. Equation y equals mx minus x. C, we don't know C, so that's the problem for part C. We don't know C. Okay, and so the presentation is a bit different from my previous working, but I bet you understand what it means. Okay, the last one. Just go quickly. Okay, the last one, still remember x-intercept. You need to put 5, 0. So it's a little bit different presentation, okay, both for myself. So sorry for inconsistent. So sometimes I'm not a quite consistent teacher. That's not a very good um, I mean practice, I should say. Well, not very good practice from a teacher not being so consistent. Right, this one will be your homework. And of course, I'm not going to give you all the questions, but you can spend the remaining time of the class, if there's still some time remains in the class, then can you do as much as possible. Especially try to do some question in question 3. So if you can't do all of them, of course you can't. Okay, I just circle some of the questions so you can try some of them. Can we try 2 questions here? So this one passing through the origin. Can we try 2 questions here? Through the given points, 2 questions here. Gradient x-intercept. Oh, okay, x-intercept. Be careful, not y-intercept. Do 2 questions here. So in total, there will be 6 questions you can do for the remaining lesson. But if you finish earlier, you are always welcome to do all of them. Okay. Unfortunately, I can't give you any gift by doing so. Here are the answers. You can track your answers as always. Okay, so I hope you enjoy the video, and I really appreciate the teacher help you to pause the video, help us to go through the lesson. Okay, I will try to make another one if I'm not too sick. I hope so. I feel much better today. Anyway, COVID is nothing nowadays. Okay, that's for today. See you tomorrow.